Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Candice. Today I wanted to talk about the books that I read for my reading goal, my Goodreads reading goal that I initially set for myself. I already met that goal because I set it kind of low because I've never really set a goal like that for myself for the year, and I really didn't have like a good idea of how many books I could finish within a year. So I decided to sort of set it low, and if I got that much, I'd be really happy. And then if I got more than that, I'd be super happy. So I initially set it for 24 books, which I know for people on BookTube is probably like, I read that much in a month. But I don't read that much in a month. I have a lot of other hobbies, you know, working, things like that. Like I don't read a ton of books in a short amount of time. So I set it really low, but then I finished that like just kind of recently. So obviously there's still plenty of time in the year left, and I'm probably going to set that number higher next year. But yeah, so 24 books was what I initially started with, and I just kind of wanted to talk about them. I am going to be splitting this video up into different parts because obviously 24 books is a lot, and there would be a really long video if I talked about them all in this. So this first part is kind of just like a generic one with books that I haven't separated out for some special reason or another. So I have other ones that are separate for various reasons, and then these are all the ones that didn't fall into those categories. I have 9 books, I think, that I'm going to talk about, and this might get split up into 2 parts for those 9 books. I'm going to be pretty general with when I talk about them because it's been a while since I've read some of these, and I don't remember exactly all of my thoughts about it, but I'll let you know the star rating I gave them. And they're vaguely chronological, except for the ones that I took out for those special reasons, like I said. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is like how I use the star rating. I guess I use the Goodreads like 5-star rating system, and I give out 5 stars pretty easily, like, but basically 5 stars aren't just like my most favorite book ever. They're just books that I liked a lot, like a lot. And then 4 stars is kind of more where most of my ratings probably are. It's like I like that book a lot. There were some things about it that maybe weren't great, but in general, I really liked that book. 3 stars is like I liked this book quite a bit, but I'm not crazy about it. 2 stars is kind of half and half. It's either I liked the book well enough, but it didn't interest me enough to want to keep it. Like I'll probably unhaul that book. Or 2 stars is like I didn't really like this book. It wasn't horrible, but so that's 2 stars. And then 1 star obviously is like I hated this book. There's nothing redeeming about this book. Maybe I can give you an example for me. Like 1 star is, for me, I'm sorry if you love this book, but for me, 1 star is Ready Player One. I hated that book. I didn't finish it. I got as far as I could. I can't remember how many pages, but like a decent amount in. And I hated it. I hated the references that they were making all the time. Like just name dropping references, even if I like that thing, isn't going to be cool for me. And then like he uses a lot of terminology like fag and pussy and stuff like that I just was like, okay, so now we need to bring back the horrible 80s slang that we got rid of because they're problematic. So I hated that book. And anyway, so that was a 1 star for me. 5 star for me would I have a lot of 5 star, but a few of them are in this. I suppose a 5 star for me would be The Shadow of the Wind, sorry, The Shadow of the Wind. I love that book. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I just think it's perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. You should read it. Everyone should read that book, The Shadow of the Wind. So those are 2 examples. Anyway, so this intro has been long enough, so let's move on to the books. So let's start off with a bang, and one of the first books I read during this year was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It was super hyped up on BookTube, and this was like the first book that I got from Book of the Month, and you guys are gonna hate me because I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was fine. I almost put it down. I really almost put it down. Basically, my problem with this book that made it 3 stars and not a 4 stars is I think the author is really terrible at descriptions. I think she's great at dialogue. And luckily most of the book is dialogue, so that's like what made me finish it and what I ended up actually liking. But she is terrible at descriptions. Like, let me see if I can find the part that just as an example. Okay, here's the example. It's near the beginning. Grace brings me into a sitting room. It is bright and airy with floor-to-ceiling white bookcases and 2 overstuffed cream-colored chairs. This is like the description of Evelyn's home that's supposed to be beautiful and like the envy of everything, of everybody. And I just think her description is just so flat for me. It's just so not interesting. I also thought it was kind of preachy at the beginning with like its feminism. I'm a feminist. I love feminism. I prefer my feminism to be shown and not just like smashed into your face. But luckily that part doesn't last for very long. And then otherwise I just thought the story was okay. Evelyn Hugo's great. Like, she's a really interesting character. The things that they're going through is really interesting. You know, I don't know. I thought it was okay. It was good. I enjoyed it. I'm keeping it. But I just thought it was okay. Also, one side note. Where are her boobies? Okay, where are her girls? I just want to say this is not the like amazing bootylicious, like boobalicious woman that they talk about in the book. And as a kind of big-chested woman myself, since that was like her identity, I really related to that as like when being like the kind of person where people see you and they're like, boobs. And I just, come on. Anyway, so Evelyn Hugo, the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo got 3 stars from me. I'm sorry. Next, I read a book, or I listened to a book on audiobook so I don't have it in physical form. It's called The Lord of Opium, and it is a sequel to a book that I read when I was younger and I wanted to reread it, called The House of the Scorpion. And it's kind of like a middle grade novel, I guess, young adult, but it deals with some like really messed up stuff. But it's really good. So The House of the Scorpion is great. I would give The House of the Scorpion 5 stars. I gave Lord of Opium 4 stars because I didn't like it as much as the first one, but I liked it out as well. So that series, the duology, is basically about this kid who is raised in this country that's on the border between the US and Mexico. It's set in the future. And that country, it's a small country, and it's called Opium. And it's run by this drug lord who has like an iron fist. He's really rich. He's got an iron fist on this country. And there's some messed up stuff going on inside his borders. And it's basically about the main character, Mateo, finding out about all the messed up stuff and basically setting out to sort of right the wrongs that are being done. And a lot of the first book is like the revelations, and then a lot of the second book, The Lord of Opium, is sort of trying to fix this horrible country. So I think it follows Mateo's life, but he only, like, the oldest that he gets is like 15, I think. And so it's like this young kid trying to deal with these really heavy consequences of what that country does. So I really recommend that. The audio version was great for both of them. The narrator did a really good job. So I highly recommend those. The reason why the second book got 4 stars and not 5 stars for me is that it felt like it was trying to be too many kinds of books at once. Like, it just has so many things going on. Like some really sci-fi things, some sort of, it's more of like not a contemporary, but like it's set in the real world, but then it introduces these really like far out sci-fi things, and you feel like, hey, can we explore that? But then it doesn't. And then it sort of puts all these different seeds in that would make for really, really interesting stories if it developed it further, but it doesn't develop any of them very far. So I felt like maybe not all of that needed to be in there. And it would have made a tighter story. Next book that I read is called Amber and Dusk by Lyra Selene. That's a beautiful name. I wonder if it's a pen name. I got this from basically the only like loot box that I've ever gotten. I subscribe to Sketchbox, which is like an art supplies subscription box. I don't really do the book ones other than book of the month, but like that doesn't count. It's just a book. This was Unicorn Crate, and I don't really want to do it again. It's not like I didn't like Unicorn Crate, but I'm not the target audience. Like, it's meant for teenagers who are really into like jewelry and little knickknacks and pins that have quotes on them and things like that, and that's just not me. I don't want wall scrolls on my wall, things like that. Also, this is just a quirk about me, but I really don't like quotes on my wall or on my stuff, like words. I like art, I like prints, I don't like words. I don't know why. As a writer, that's weird, but I just don't want quotes on my wall. For me, I think it looks tacky. So I probably won't ever get it again, but this is the book I got the first time. And I also gave this 3 stars. It's a YA fantasy novel. And basically it's about a world where half of the world is in darkness all the time, and then half of the world is in like this really harsh, bright sunlight. And there's a magic in the dark side of the world, like a black magic that's slowly creeping and taking over the rest of the world. And the best place to live is in the sort of the twilight area, where I'm assuming it's not too hot. I don't know. They don't really talk about like how crazy hot it would be on the light side. Apparently they're not astronomy majors, but anyway. And so the black magic is slowly creeping and expanding the dark part of the world. And if you live on the edge of that, that's where you're really poor. And then to live sort of closer to the light side, where it's this beautiful amber color all the time, is like for the elite. And so it's about this girl who has a name. Sylvie, that's her name. She changes it to Mirage eventually, but she starts out Sylvie. She's trying to go to the Amber City because she has this special kind of blood-based magic that like means she's supposed to be in this fancy court that's only for those people, and she's like wants to take her rightful place there. And she falls in love, things like that. Like it was fine. I'm really picky with YA, guys, so it was fine. I wanted there to be a more variety of descriptions. Like, she does a really good job of describing the beauty of this city and like the amber colored, it's all glass and stuff like that. But that's all, she just constantly describes that and nothing else. And it gets old after a while. You're like, all right, I get it, it's amber. And the first time it was cool, but the next after that it wasn't great. There's not a lot of character development. The main character for me was kind of bland. And it just, not enough happened in it for me to feel like I want to continue on with the series. So even though I gave it 3 stars, I probably won't continue on with that series. So that was unfortunate. I really wanted to like it. But I ended up not liking a lot from that Unicorn Crate, so that made me sad. Anyway, moving on. Another early book that I read was Queenie, also a book of the month. I gave this book 5 stars. This book is about Queenie, who has just gotten out of a relationship, and she's sort of trying to work on herself, and she wants to get back into the relationship, but he doesn't want to, and she just keeps hooking up with these guys that treat her like crap, and she's estranged from her family for various reasons, and it's just about her mental health and struggling with her mental health and maintaining her work while she's going through this and maintaining her friendships. It's really raw, it's really great, very realistic. You really feel for Queenie, and it's like hard because like she's doing so many dumb things. You're like, you're dumb, stop doing that. But you also have been there probably, like where you're doing dumb things and you know they're dumb, but you can't stop yourself. And Queenie as a character for me, she very much like fluctuated between being super annoying and like being sympathetic. And I think that's very realistic for someone who's going through that. Because it's like, if you're going through something, you can be kind of selfish, and and she's quite selfish with regards to her friends, but then you feel bad for her and you understand why she's being like that, because she just can't get out of her own head enough to notice like some of the damage that she's doing to her other relationships. So if you're going through anything, or even if you're not and you just want to maybe understand a friend better who's going through something, I really recommend this book. The ending was super satisfying for me. I just felt like it wrapped up in such a good, positive way, but also a realistic way. So I highly recommend this book. One of the next books that I read was Wild Beauty. I actually picked up this book because I saw it on Books and Lala's channel. And I thought she seemed to really like it, and it's so pretty that I just wanted it. Look at this cover. Gosh, it's so pretty. Anyway, how many stars did I give this book? 4. I gave it 4. So yeah, I actually quite liked this book. The plot was really interesting. The descriptions are so good. They're so lush, and it's basically about these sisters that live on this estate that has these beautiful gardens, and they have this magic where they can make things grow basically instantly, and their job is to maintain this estate, which is owned by a family that they've served since time immemorial, and they all have a crush on the current owner of the estate, who is a girl. So it has really great different sexuality representation, and these women, they have a curse on them. They can never leave the estate, and anybody that they fall in love with too deeply will disappear, and they don't know why. And basically they think it's the land sort of making sure that they never leave. And so when they find out that all of the sisters love this girl, they are freaking out because they don't want her to disappear, right? So, and then one day they find this boy who essentially came out of the ground, who looks, who they think is one of the lovers, the disappeared lovers from one of their grandmothers, like in the past. And they are trying to find out why the land has decided to give this previous lover back to them. So it's really interesting. It's really sweet. I think the reason I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 is I thought that the wrap up of it was kind of sudden, and I don't know, it wasn't not satisfying, like it was satisfying, but I just felt like it was wrapped up too quickly, and it was a lot of like sort of info dump suddenly, and then it was over. So I would have liked maybe a little bit more gradual leading up to that, and more slow uncovering of that mystery. But it was really good, and I still recommend it, and I give thanks to Lala for inspiring me to read that. One of the next books that I read was The Night Tiger, another book of the month, and I was really, really excited to read this one. I gave The Night Tiger 4 stars. The Night Tiger is set in Malaysia, and it's about a woman who works at a dance hall against her parents' wishes. They don't know about it, and while she's dancing with this sort of skeezy guy, she accidentally takes this file from him, like a glass file, and it has a severed finger in it that's preserved. And that's this severed finger, while she's trying to return it to the hospital that it came from, it ends up leading her to this really creepy mystery. And everything is connected to this finger. I really liked this book. I loved the atmosphere of it. It's got this sort of slow creepiness where you just feel like something's gonna go wrong at any moment. It's a mystery, but it's also got a little bit of fantasy. You're not sure if the fantasy is real or not, or if it's just superstition. And it just is so interesting. It's such a unique story, and I really highly recommend it. There is a romance, and the romance is probably the reason why I gave it 4 stars and not 5. Some people really were disturbed by the romance. here's a small spoiler about the relationship of these people. If you hate any spoilers at all, go away. Okay? All right. The spoiler is that the main character and her lover are stepbrother and sister. So they're not like, it's not totally incest, obviously, because they're not blood related, but it's still kind of weird. That part actually didn't bother me that much, even though it bothered a lot of other people, like on Goodreads. I don't know. I watch Game of Thrones. There's a lot of incest in that. What bothered me is that her stepbrother is kind of a jerk. Like, he's really controlling of her, and he's just mean to her a lot of the time, and I really didn't like that about the relationship, and I really didn't like the way that romance progressed. So that's why I gave it 4 stars. But other than that, everything about this book is great, and you should go read it. One of the next books that I read was called The Space Between Us, and it is by Thrity Umrigar. I'm saying that totally wrong, probably. I'm sorry. The weird thing when I bought this book from Barnes & Noble was the lady, they didn't have it, and I asked about it, and the lady was like, so that book is from 2007. Okay? Do you have it or not? Like, I don't know. So, like, just because it's old, it's not that old. But anyway, I had to order it. I read this book for a book club that I'm in, that's super casual. It's just between a few friends. And it was actually my suggestion. I read it during the Asian readathon. I read it during the Asian readathon. And I was really excited to read this. Unfortunately, I only gave it 3 stars. This book, The Space Between Us, is about 2 older women who have formed a friendship and have their own individual struggles with their marriages. It's set in India, and it's basically just about their friendship, their relationship, and juxtaposed against their individual marriages. And there's also dealing with one of the woman's granddaughter who got pregnant while she was in university. Most of this book is pretty good. It's a little bit slow, and it's quite sad. So if you don't like slow and sad, you probably won't like this book. I like slow and sad. That's fine. There's a lot of really interesting examination of class, of socioeconomic class, because one of the women is higher class, and the other woman, the main character, I guess, Binta. Is her name Binta? Bhima. Bhima is the other woman's maid. So there's a lot of like questioning about class, about women's rights, about marriage, about especially marriage in India. Like, it's not great over there for women in a lot of respects. So I definitely appreciated that examination of it. The reason I only gave it 3 stars is there are certain things that I didn't think were explored enough, and that really bothered me. Like, her granddaughter who's pregnant, she wasn't enough of a character. She was just sort of driving the plot, or she was like an issue in the plot, rather than a character in her own right with her own arc. And the things that she goes through, the book really doesn't examine those. It just sort of skips along back to Bhima and her friend, and that really bothered me because it was such a huge thing that she goes through, and just to not give her own voice, or for a little bit, really bothered me. And then also the conclusion of the book, it didn't really make sense to me. It was very sudden. I didn't really understand like the emotional connection that it had with everything else that happened before it in the book, and it just really bothered me. And then there's a perspective I wanted to see at the end that I didn't see, that just, I don't know, it just let me down, I guess, and that was enough for me to take off 2 stars, which is pretty impressive, because usually this kind of book is like right up my alley. So I do recommend it, but just, I don't know. I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts about this book, actually, because I really wanted to like it. Anyway, the next book that I read was called Descendant of the Crane. I mostly bought this on impulse because look at this cover. It's so pretty. Oh my God. It's a YA fantasy. I gave Descendant of the Crane 3 stars. You probably are all like, wow, you only give out 3 stars. I swear, there is YA that I like. I'll talk about some later in a different video. So The Descendant of the Crane is about a girl named Hasina who is the heir to her kingdom. And her father passes away through what everyone says is natural causes, but she thinks that it's not natural and she wants to investigate it. Through the investigation, Hasina discovers secrets about her kingdom and her lineage that have really terrible implications. In this world, there are people called soothsayers who have magic. Part of that magic involves seeing into the future, and they were originally like the oppressors of this world, and now they are the oppressed since the non-magic people sort of took over power. And Hasina doesn't want people to know that she sympathizes with the soothsayers and that she doesn't want them to be oppressed anymore, because she wants to sort of eventually get them to be not oppressed without making people hate her beforehand. The themes of this book are really great. They're really interesting. The plot is pretty slow going. And for me, I felt like it really didn't give enough world building. There wasn't enough description. If you can't tell, I have a thing about description. I need to have a lot of description about how it looks, how the world is. There wasn't enough development of her relationships with any of the characters. She has 2 siblings that are really important to her. Well, she actually has 4 siblings, but like 2 of them she likes better. She doesn't want to admit that, but she obviously likes them better. And then I don't know. I just felt like nothing was quite as developed as I wanted it to be. And it's not that long, so maybe give me another 50 pages with more development, please. Unlike a few of my other 3-star reads, I am actually going to continue on with this book because I felt like the end was a really great cliffhanger and it made me really interested to see what happens. So, apparently it was like originally going to be a single book, but I don't believe that. I think unless she just tacked on the ending and completely changed it, like it's obviously supposed to be a series. So I'm excited to read the next one. I hope that there's more development to make me rate it a little bit higher. Okay, and the last book that I want to talk about in this first video is called The Perfect Girlfriend. This is a thriller that I borrowed from my mother. This is the lowest rated book. Sorry, Mom. This is the lowest rated book of the books that I've read this year. I originally rated it 3 stars, and then I actually recently kind of want to bump it down to 2.5. So it's really the first like heavy thriller that I've read. And I really like thriller movies, so I think I would really like thriller books. It's basically about a woman named Juliet, and she recently was broken up with from her boyfriend, and that has really set her off, and she's determined to get him back no matter what. So he's a pilot, she becomes a flight attendant, she like breaks into his house and stalks him and all this stuff, and she's super creepy. So like that part is great. She's super like scary. But it's really slow. It takes a really long time for anything to happen, and you can only maintain that what's gonna happen for so long before you're kind of bored. And it also this is gonna make me sound messed up, but it didn't go far enough for me in terms of like the crazy things that she does. It really doesn't happen until quite a ways into the book, and she hardly, I don't know, I just wanted her to do more, be more crazy. And then the ending for me, it's a very ambiguous ending. It's very what happens next, but not in like the way that it's going to be a series. And that I don't know, I really didn't like the ending. So the first part of the book, most of the book is okay. It's slow. The part that's scary is pretty good. And then the ending was terrible. So it was fine. I probably won't keep it. Yeah, so that's the end of my video. I hope this wasn't too boring for you. I'll talk about the rest of the books I read during this challenge in some future videos. If you've read any of these books, I'd really, really love to hear from you. And you know what? Argue with me about Evelyn Hugo, because I'm ready. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you next time.